Welcome to Educate, Inform, and Challenge. My name is Teresa MacLennan. I'm the Executive Director of the Women and Children's Shelter of Barrie, and we're so thankful that you are here with us today. Our show is about diving in deep and talking about the lives of women. We want to know and explore women's experiences. We'll be talking about violence against women, gender equity, opportunities for leadership and decision-making for women, and really what is the experience from women from all walks of life. So we're really happy that you're with us today. And I also just want to take a moment to thank our Indigenous and Aboriginal people for allowing us to share in this space and to have these conversations. We thank you so much. I am honored today to welcome our guest, Sarah Cunningham, from the Women and Children's Shelter of Barrie. Sarah, welcome. And Sarah, can you explain to our viewers what your role is at the Women and Children's Shelter and specifically your work you're doing with the Women's Advocacy Council?
Hi, thank you, Teresa, for having me. My name is Sarah Cunningham, and I'm the Women's Advocacy Project Coordinator for the Women and Children's Shelter of Barrie. My role is I get to work with a dynamic group of women that sit on the Women's Advocacy Council. This council is newly formed here in Simcoe County, and we were born out of a report in 2019. A report came out, and it's called The Best and Worst Places to Be a Woman in Canada. And Barrie, unfortunately, was ranked dead last. So born out of that report, the Women and Children's Shelter of Barrie submitted to the Women and Gender Equality of Canada, which is formerly known as the Status of Women of Canada. And so born out of that report, this council was able to be formed. So there's a group of women with the Women's Advocacy Council, and we work together in terms of identifying gender gaps that we have here in Simcoe County as well as in Barrie. So we're creating some initiatives and identifying and addressing some of the inequalities that we have here in Simcoe County.
So, Sarah, I'd like to dive in really deep to that because, certainly there's been historically a great movement for women and new opportunities being created for women by women. And, lots of folks in our community might say, well, what is there left to do? Like, haven't we equalized this playing field, right? Can you speak to that and offer us what your thoughts are about comments and thoughts about that? What does the movement in terms of gender equity look like for women? Have we achieved it? And what does that look like?
So what we've really realized out of that report, there's 5 key areas that identified the inequalities that we have here actually in Barrie and in Simcoe County. And those 5 areas are economic security, women's health, women's education and training, women's personal security, which the violence against women also falls under, and also the women's leadership and democratic participation. And so within those 5 areas, it was very clear to us that we haven't made it. There's still many gender gaps and inequalities within those sectors. And so just for instance, our women in leadership and democratic participation. So back in late 2019, when I was first doing some research and trying to gather some data, and we didn't have quite a bit. So I was doing some environmental scans in terms of Simcoe County. And what I had found out back then, we were at 28% of women's participation in leadership in municipalities. And I've also included the Tri-Council, which speaks in terms of our truth and reconciliation. Two of them are in Simcoe County, one is not. However, they are a tri-council of our First Nations within our area. So I've also included them in most of our stats that we have presented in many of our reports and a lot of our educational material and initiatives. So that 28% only in leadership. And then we had a by-election here in Barrie, and Anne-Marie was voted in. So that jumped up to 29% overall. And that's what we're sitting at currently. I had also identified, unfortunately, we still have 2 municipalities that have zero representation of women on their city councils. So there is still much work to be done. And so part of some of our initiatives is to encourage more women to run in the next municipal elections along with the federal elections. So we are currently undergoing and creating some workshops and information and educational toolkits to have more women in those positions of leadership and democratic participation.
Thank you for that clarification, Sarah. I think that is really helpful for our viewers. And I want to dive a little bit deeper into some of those other pillars that you spoke about. And of course, we are an agency that supports violence against women and their children. Can you speak about your knowledge and even in general terms, in terms of the experience for women and violence?
There is still much there's quite a bit of violence that is happening here in Simcoe County. And especially during COVID, we've seen an increase of calls, in particular to the Women and Children Shelter of Barrie. And also, lots of other partnerships that we've also developed, looking at some audits and also creating other projects and initiatives in terms of overcoming the violence against women and the importance of the safety planning. So we're still seeing it here in Simcoe County. And in terms of the violence that we are seeing, we've also partnered with a couple of other organizations to really see to put a stop to and ask for some chief of justice to really uphold some of those even peace bonds that they're not having here in Simcoe County or upholding due to COVID. So we've partnered with other agencies such as Luke's Place to also address some of the systematic forms of violence that women and children are experiencing here in Simcoe County so that we can provide an overall protection with them and for them.
And I think that is a great point, because certainly we know in the supports that we provide to women that they carry internal barriers sometimes to being able to move through and with the violence that they've experienced. But there's also external barriers to themselves. And you mentioned, they may be going through the court system. They're working with police. They are, economically finding affordable housing, right? Those can be those external barriers that are preventing women from being able to move through the violence they've experienced and create a new life for themselves and their children. Can you also speak about some of the systemic processes, systemic systems that we have that are working against us in terms of gender equity? So I think about something like affordable daycare for women who are trying to find employment. Can you speak to that or examples like that?
Yes. So the Women's Advocacy Council, we've done quite a bit of research, and we've also pulled other research in terms of what we're really wanting to see here in Simcoe County. And one is affordable universal childcare. Quebec in 2008 actually introduced their universal childcare. And it was actually amazing to see when women have access to affordable childcare, it actually increases the GDP, gross domestic product increases here in Quebec. And so they were seeing every public dollar that was invested with, whether it's provincial and federal, they were actually seeing a $2.47 increase benefit to their economy. So it kind of just made sense. It makes sense for us to be able to have this universal childcare. And so the Women's Advocacy Council, we've been really advocating provincially to the MPs, MPPs, and also to the federal government to really try to hone in and receive this universal childcare, and especially moving forward during COVID. This is essential that we need affordable childcare here in Simcoe County. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but even Quebec, when they did introduce it, it was 1.7% increase in their GDP, but actually that translates to $5.1 billion that goes back into the economy when women have affordable childcare. So I'm thinking if Quebec can do this, we can do this here in Ontario. And moving forward, we need this. We need the universal childcare as well as the increase, right? It also, with that affordable childcare, they also seen 70,000 mothers go back to work or go back into education or training streams. That also helps push our GDP and it benefits our economy overall.
Mm-hmm. Sarah, that information is so vital. And I love that you have shared that. And, you know, even giving the numbers to that helps people to understand what the benefit is going to be for everyone in the community. And so I want to really sink into this and have further conversation about, of course, the work of the council and the initiatives, you know, that you've taken on and that you're providing leadership to. Please stay with us. We will be back in just a short while and we'll continue this great conversation.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
I did it.
I need it.
The hero gave it.
And I am alive.
As an organ donor, you can save up to 8 lives and enhance the lives of 75 others. Please go to our website. Pledge a gift of life. You'll be glad you did.
What kind of show do you want to see on Rogers TV? What interests you? Log on to rogerstv.com, fill out a show proposal, and tell us about your segment idea. We want to know what you want to see. Rogers TV, only on Rogers.
Welcome back. I'm Teresa MacLennan from the Women and Children Shelter of Barrie, and we're having a great discussion with Sarah Cunningham, who is the Women's Advocacy Council Coordinator in conjunction with the Women and Children Shelter of Barrie. Welcome back, Sarah. And we're really happy to dive back into our conversation about the Women's Advocacy Council and the work that we're doing. Sarah, can you help our viewers to understand who actually makes up the Women's Advocacy Council? What does that group look like?
Mm-hmm. So the Women's Advocacy Council, our members that form the council come from a diverse group and background of personal experience, their lived experience, as well as their professional experience. So we have many members uplifting and representing different communities, and especially with the work that the Women's Advocacy Council does in terms of really trying to overcome the barriers, and especially the barriers that our LGBTQ2S community, our Indigenous women and girls, our non-conforming community, as well as our newcomers and migrant women, and especially here in Simcoe County, because we have the fastest growing population of newcomers and migrant women and girls. So the Women's Advocacy Council members, we have a member from our council from each of those diverse backgrounds and also lived experience. But there are many women that are in leadership roles here in Simcoe County, and with a background that has that focus of our 5 pillars. So background within the education systems and sectors, the women's health, personal security, small businesses. We have an entrepreneurship, also women that come from the violence against women sector, and also ones that actually have lived experience, and also women that are in city councils and leadership roles here in Simcoe County and or in our First Nations communities. And so with that lens, we're able to really address the systematic barriers, but we also come up with solutions in terms of how can we address this? What do we need to do better? What education do we need to provide to the community? And to also rally in terms of how are we going to make this change happen to improve the lives of our community and our future generations here in Simcoe County and within our First Nations communities. So
I think that is a wonderful lead in to my next question, which is to really understand and tangibly what initiatives are the Women's Advocacy Council, what have you been doing over the last year, and are you seeing an impact to those initiatives? So let's start with talking about what has the Women's Advocacy Council been doing?
So over the last year since we were formed, we have participated in a couple of rallies pre-COVID in terms of, especially with the Black Lives Matter and our community partnerships here in Simcoe County and also within Ontario, and also our Black Students Matters as well. So really addressing the racism that happens and trying to improve the education in terms of the education, right? In terms of Black History Month, for instance. So really the Women's Advocacy Council, a lot of our initiatives, many people are starting to reach out for us to do consultations at different roundtables, looking at policies and procedures. How can they change even the curriculum, whether it's in high school or at a college or university level, in terms of how that looks like, and to really do environmental scans and to teach that, especially at a college level course, say for manufacturing, for instance. What does that look like? Are you achieving gender equality? And to be able to do that gender equality analysis. So we've been able to partner with some community partners in Simcoe County and also in Ontario for us to give some consultation, some advice in terms of what we're seeing and how just even small policies and procedures can leave a huge effect to educate others on the importance of doing the gender equality analysis. So there's those initiatives. We've also identified, especially income, economic security, especially during a time of COVID. So we've also provided some financial literacy, just basic, especially for our young women and students as well, in terms of what their credit history, how to budget, and especially we see this with our post-secondary students as well. How can they financially make themselves more secure and knowledgeable in terms of their financial freedom and participation. And so being able to provide those workshops to the community like we have, and we still continue to do, we have some upcoming workshops as well that we will be addressing. But we've also developed and advocated, especially in terms of the throne speech, addressing those issues that are so vitally important in moving forward equality, but also moving forward in our economy. We need to stabilize our economy, and women are such an important factor in the future of our economy here in Ontario and in Simcoe County. And so being able to start having those dialogues and conversations, even at an MP level, even just locally with your city councillors, as well as our MPPs, and moving that forward and coming up with different solutions, and also addressing, our concerns. But ultimately, it's us coming together to provide some solutions in how we see us moving forward to improving the lives of all of us here in Simcoe County.
And I love what you said there, and I think it really highlights that the importance of women being at the table to have the discussion and input to make change happen. Because outside of us, it cannot be women who are saying what needs to happen. It cannot not be women, if I'm saying that right, that are making the decisions about the movement that has to happen for women. Women need to be at the table, have input, have discussion, and be decision makers in that. Outside of women, so men making those decisions for women, is inequality in itself, right? So talking about those wonderful initiatives that you've been involved in, what kind of feedback or response do you feel that you're getting from some of those initiatives?
From the response has been overwhelming and very positive. Without going into too much detail, because we're still awaiting a few approvals for funding, but it's pretty much one of a kind of programs that we've partnered with different organizations and corporations in moving forward to gain that equality here within those different sectors, whether it's education, policy making, and that. So it's been an overwhelming response, a positive response. And we have more and more people reaching out to us to consult on some of their policies, procedures, their activities. And because of the council, we are very much an open group of women to really have those candid conversations. Very candid conversations. What do you think of this? How do you say that, because we do have representation from the LGBTQ2S, Black community, we have Indigenous community, from our Francophone as well. Oh, and I do want to mention that we are the first here in Simcoe County to actually have our logo, our Women's Advocacy Council logo in French, as well as our Anishinaabe Moen, which I'm really proud. And it actually opens up the door. And we've had that because people from that community also recognizes and they see that language. And I think that's also very important. And for us to really take the time to be able to, even for our website and as much as materials we can get out there, to have it within the different languages. So even that has been an overwhelming response on how we're doing things just a little bit different, but having that inclusion within our council and organization.
I think that is a tremendous success. And I think that that is really attributed to the work that you've been doing in terms of guiding the council and moving that initiative forward. And I think that there are just wonderful, great things to come. I'm going to give you 1 minute, Sarah. And I'm going to, it's a big question, and I'm hoping you're going to be able to address it in 1 minute. But if you could tell our viewers, if we have reached gender equity, what would that look like in an ideal world?
Well, in an ideal world, so personally, I dream, I completely, honestly, wholeheartedly dream that one day I'm going to be out of a job. We won't need to have the women's shelter. I won't need to have voice in terms of trying to achieve gender equality here in Simcoe County, or having to be out there rallying for Black lives or for Indigenous women and girls, for our murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls in our 2S communities. So for me, when we achieve gender equality and have a balanced community, a healthy community, I'm going to be out of a job. And I pray every day that that happens.
And I, of course, from the Women and Children's Shelter, I really appreciate what you said, because we are celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. And while we celebrate the work that we've done, and we're very proud of that, I believe in exactly what you said. I believe it is important for us to continue to work ourselves out of a job. And if we weren't needed, we would not be here. And so I really agree with you. And I hope that one day we don't need to have discussions about gender equality. We don't need to have discussions about violence against women, because we have eradicated, the oppression. We've eradicated the systems that are influencing violence against women, that are influencing gender inequity. And I think that you and I share in that vision of really looking forward to that day. And so I think that is a really good place for us to put a pin in our discussion today. And Sarah, I just want to thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your expertise, your insights. You have provided me and our community with a lot to think about. And I just really applaud you. It is wonderful work that you're doing in the community, and we encourage you just to keep on going. And so I also want to thank our viewers for being with us here today, and really just coming along this journey with us to have open dialogue where we can challenge each other and inspire and educate one another, and have good, healthy discussions about the experiences of women. My name again is Teresa MacLennan, and thank you so much for being with us. And we just hope that all of you are staying well and taking care. Bye-bye.